Thanks very much, Doug, and thanks, Francis, for setting this up for me there. And so I'll give a little brief presentation on what I know in relation to beekeeping, and I will preempt what I'm going to say first. Like, I'm no expert when it comes to beekeeping. I don't think anybody is. You could be at this beekeeping for 50 years, and every day is a school day. So I'll try and impart as best I can whatever bit of knowledge I have, and sort of how I got into it, and the role of honeybees and the wider spectrum of bees in the country and internationally as well, and how important they are for pollination and for the future well-being of our planet. So do you want to move on there a minute there, Francis or Douglas? Yeah?
Yep.
Yeah, so looking at it there, like they're part of a huge part of pollinators, and it's very important, like, to pollinate plants, and something like 70 to 80% of our food comes from pollinators all over the world. And I suppose bees, just a little bit of history. Bees are in the world around 90 million years as a species. And I suppose they predate dinosaurs and ourselves as well. If you look at a 24-hour clock, which is a good way of looking at it, if you said bees were in the world 24 hours, then modern man, as we know today, with opposing thumbs and Darwinism and all that sort of a thing, we're in the world roughly 4 seconds. So it just gives you an indication of how important, how strong species they are, bees. So it's very, very important, like, that we try and do what we can to preserve what bees we have. And just getting back to the honeybees, we have a very, very important species in Ireland. I suppose up to a few years ago we thought they were extinct, but a university in Limerick and Galway has done some tests on them, and we have a very, very important subspecies called the native Irish black bee. We're trying as hard as ever we can to try and preserve the native Irish bee. And I think there's a role, let's say, for anybody that's getting into bees, it's very, very important that we use our own native queens. And I'm a member of a sort of a breeding group, and we breed what's called Apis mellifera, and there's a subspecies. That's a European honeybee, but the Irish bee is a subspecies of that. So we're doing as much as we can to try and make sure that we preserve our native Irish bees. There's actually legislation gone through the Senate at the moment. Senator Vincent P. Martin brought forward a white paper, in fairness, and because of, through ourselves, to the Native Irish Bee Society, and we hope we'll get through the Dáil, which will stop the importation of foreign bees. Let's say Italians and Carolinians, they're subspecies as well. What happens is there's a couple of different things that happen when you bring in foreign bees. They can be very, very productive for the first year or two, but then they can get very, very cross and very aggressive. And it can get to the stage that in your apiary, that if you have foreign bees cross breeding with the native Irish bees, it just gets to the stage that you get stung alive out of the hive, out of the apiary. So that's why we're trying to keep them, the native Irish bee, as much as we can. So so just going down through it, they're important worldwide for pollination, and a third of the food, at least over. The figures that I would have would say 70–80% of our food is pollinated by bees. You take in America, you have almonds, and you have a lot of the fruits around the world is pollinated by bees. So I'll move on there, Douglas. So this is just a sort of a photograph I took myself at home, and just things that people can do. That's a bit of wildflower that I grew for my apiary. And I suppose when you look at honeybees, people start off being interested in keeping a couple of hives, which is great. But it opens up a door then for people that to see, well, if I grow a little bit of wildflower, it'll attract in bumblebees, and it'll attract in different types of solitary bees. Also, it brings in butterflies and a huge diversity of insects. So, like, lot alone are you doing your bit, let's say, to keep the honeybees going. But by growing, let's say, an acre or half an acre, if you can, of wildflower in your garden, it can be very, very effective. And like, it's easy grow enough wildflower. There's a few little tricks to it, is maybe other people that know it the same as myself. But and it grows most well on poor ground. So the poorest bit of ground that you have on the farm, if you only put in an acre of it, and it can be quite beautiful. Now that in the summertime is a sight to behold. And actually, I had a bit there just in front of my own house, as you can see. And I also grew a bit in a council lay-by beside the house as well. And people used to stop and take photographs of it because it's very, very beautiful in the summertime. Now, just going down through the list of things that you should sow. So starting off, the first thing that the bees will harvest in the springtime is snowdrops. So sow a few snowdrops around your garden, very good for them. The next thing is good is the willow and sally and hazel. So they're good. The catkins off those is very good source of food very early in the year when there's nothing else. Of course, the big one that we're all trying to keep now, one time we used to all use the Roundup on them, is the dandelion. Beautiful flower that produces absolutely beautiful honey. The whitethorn some years will return a crop, but of a very cold spring, sort of like what we're having at the moment, the whitethorn is not so good. The main crop for honey production in Ireland would be like the white clover, blackberry. They would be our main crop. Honey that's very, very sought after on the show benches, on the judges' benches, is lime trees. If you're in an area whereby there's old lime trees, a lot of the old big estates had lime trees. Absolutely beautiful honey. And it produces meadow or, I can't think of it now for a minute, but it produces a very, very good honey, lovely honey, and the judges absolutely love it. The big one over the last 20, 30 years is oilseed rape. A lot of beekeepers don't like it because it crystallizes in the hive and makes things difficult. Probably the best honey you can eat of all and is ivy. And a lot of people don't know the ivy is a very good flower. That it's the last thing in the year that bees can get is ivy honey. Very, very good from a medicinal point of view. Wonderful antiseptic in ivy honey. So that's a very, very good flower to grow. And then you can also grow things like in wildflower garden, stuff like phacelia, borage, buckwheat, and cornflower. So they're all very, very good flowers to grow as well for bees. So you can move on, Douglas.
Yeah, I think you had skipped over the sycamore there, Michael, as well. That can be quite good as well.
Sycamore is a lovely tree. Yeah, comes in as well. Can produce a lot of honey as well. In the sort of mid-spring, early summer. So going down to the species of bees, there's actually 98 different species of bees in Ireland, and there's a few of them now that would be endangered. I'm sort of on the red list, where about 17 to 20 would be endangered. There's things like solitary bees and bumblebees, and like, you know, if you grow a little bit of wildflower, if you let your hedges up and let them, you know, sort of mature, you will see a lot more bumblebees around your farm. So it's important that we try and keep those. And also, let's say, if you keep a little bit of sand or fine sand, if you have a sand hills like that on your farm, try and, you know, fence those off that cattle are not getting onto them and that bumblebees can use them. There are a lot of species are under threat. I suppose in the last 20 years since the Celtic tiger, you know, a lot of sand hills around the country, unfortunately, have been destroyed. So it's important that we try and make little sort of hotels like bee hotels, or we do whatever we can to try and make sure that the bumblebees are kept, you know. And so there's like one honeybee in Ireland. It's the Apis mellifera, the northern dark bee, and tend to be seen on flowering plants, and including trees. And trees make, you know, they often say that for the good, real good honey, you want like nice trees like sycamore. As I said, the lime is an excellent tree as well. There's a lot of nice trees you can get for your garden that are excellent as well. And yeah, another very important thing that, you know, that you leave out water for them as well. That, you know, they have little containers of water, because even in the wintertime, what can kill them is that, you know, if you get a heavy frost, they need a sort of constant supply of water even in the wintertime. Yeah? And so we're going down, so like a hive contains about 50,000 bees. So I could talk a little bit briefly on that. So I suppose the most important member of the hive is the queen. And then we have around 50,000 workers. Yeah, that's grand. Getting onto there now. Yeah. 50,000 workers. Then you have, in a good hive, you might have maybe 1,000 drones. So for just the basics of it, I suppose the drones are the male bees, the workers are female bees, and the queen is the sort of the head of the family. So the queen mates with about 15 or 20 drones, and then the drones, once they mate with the queen, they die immediately. So that queen then has a genetic gene pool of about 15 or 20 different drones from other different hives. So that's what gives the queen her diversity. And a good queen will lay around 1,500 to 2,000 eggs a day. It's hard to believe it. She lays about maybe 4 times her body weight per day. It's absolutely fascinating to see her going around the hive and doing it like. So then of a good summer, then you can a good crop of honey. If you get it, you can get maybe upwards of maybe 60, 70 pounds of honey, which would be good, maybe 30 kilos, 35 kilos. Yeah. So just getting onto it, like apart from all that, it's really a fascinating subject to study. Whether you have 2 hives or 60 hives, I run about 60 hives myself, but it's basically the same principles. And I just see there, it's relaxing and can calm stress. You wouldn't think it like when you're dealing with a hive of 50,000 bees buzzing around you, but you really are in your own world, and it is very therapeutic. And I often find it's great to throw the mobile phone in the Jeep there and just go off for 2 or 3 hours and sit even looking at the bees. Like,
my gran used to say that you tell your troubles to the bee, Michael. You tell your
absolutely.
And they take your prayers to heaven.
That's right. And actually, I keep a couple of hives. I have 1 or 2 people now might have nice gardens, and it asked me would I put in a hive, which I would. And I have one lady in particular, and she goes down and she reads poetry to the bees. And so she sits in front of, they're lovely quiet bees, and she can actually sit in front of the hive, and she reads books and poetry to the bees. So it is great for lessons for kids. Now, I suppose some kids can be a little bit wary. A lot of people are very wary of bees because I suppose afraid of getting stung. This is the big thing with them. But a bee sting is not actually that bad. It's a little bit worse, let's say, than a nettle sting, but not as bad as a sting from a wasp. Now, I often got stung with wasps. I get stung with bees all the time, but it goes back to when you were kids, and usually you got stung. It's a very frightening thing when you're a kid to get stung, and usually with a wasp. So we have an inherent thing in our brain that afraid of bees. Now, you shouldn't be, because the sting is not that bad. Okay, you want to make sure that you don't have a bad reaction to them. Some people can, but I've never heard of anybody that was really very bad with it. So it's just a sort of a thing that you have to get stung. It's one thing if you have bees that you have to get stung, and you will get stung. So there's no point in keeping bees and thinking I won't get stung. But if we have to get over all that, it really is a lovely hobby for a lot of people, most people. But I suppose other people then that are really into it, it's a sort of a big hobby, or it's a nice little earner as well. Yeah. So do you want to move on, Douglas? Yeah. So even going back to the health benefits of it, like people often talk about Manuka honey, and Manuka honey has a thing called all honey has a thing called MGOs, and I suppose Manuka honey 30, 40 years ago, they couldn't sell it in New Zealand. It comes from New Zealand, but they couldn't sell it in New Zealand. They used to have to throw it out, because Manuka honey, for anyone that has it, it's not that nice to taste. It's extremely good for you, all right, but it has a tendency to have a sour taste, but it has huge antibacterial and enzyme properties, and it's all good bacteria that's in it. Now, Irish honey has been proven in the last few years especially honeys like ivy honey and heather honey, to have similar or even better health benefit qualities than Manuka honey. But like, I suppose in New Zealand's farmers or whatever, no more than their dairy industry, they really are world leaders in promotion, and that's what they have done with it. So like, yeah, it's very good for sore throats and coughs. The best honey of all you can eat for sore throats is ivy honey, which a lot of people don't know. And there again, it's a very much an acquired taste. Some people don't like the taste, but it's probably the best honey you can eat. Antibacterial and wound healing properties. There's a thing in the beehives called propolis, and propolis is the best natural antibacterial in the world. Traditionally, farmers years ago, I remember when I was a child, my father used to work horses, and if a horse got a cut, he used to put a poultice of honey and beeswax on it, and it would draw out all the bad properties out of the wound. Very, very good for skin conditions as well. I make up a little hand cream. It's a very simple thing. It's basically just beeswax with a little bit of liquid paraffin in it, and excellent for things like eczema, psoriasis, any of those skin conditions. I have people that they would have kids would be, fairly bad with different respiratory type skin conditions that's associated with skin conditions like the psoriasis or eczema, and to find that the natural product, skin product is with the beeswax in it is excellent. Yeah. So you want to move on, Douglas? So the best time to start your hive in the spring, and the colony builds up. So from now on, around about April and May is the time the numbers increase. So this is a busy time for us coming into April and May. What I usually do is I mark queens and clip them. Some beekeepers don't clip queens. The idea of clipping them is that they won't fly away with the swarm, but it's a natural instinct for them to swarm. So some of my hives I actually don't clip. What I just do is I leave the queen and just let her swarm out, and she'll usually land in a bush maybe about 20 or 30 yards away from the hive. Yeah, so a very important point. If you're getting a couple of hives, the most important thing is to place it in a sort of sheltery location with a nice sort of a hedge in front of it, maybe about 10 yards in front of it, because wind can just blow over hives and blow the roofs off it and that, and it's just important where you site them. And the last one there, yeah, so also as well as that, your neighbours is important. Now, that's why it's important to have nice quiet bees, and the native Irish bees is quiet. And I would advise anybody that's getting into bees to join a federation, a local federation. I'm in the Offaly Beekeepers Association. There's one in Tipperary as well as what you learn. Very important thing, that once you join an association, you're insured. Now there again, I know, I suppose, hundreds of beekeepers in Ireland and elsewhere, and I've yet to see anybody that has been sued. It doesn't happen. First of all, it's very difficult to prove that a bee out of your hive came out and stung somebody. And like most people, it just doesn't happen. I haven't seen it. But even if it does, the fact if you paid your €50 to your local federation, you're insured against all that. Yeah. So I think we'll move on. Yeah. Yeah. So I'd say start with 2 hives or more, because if you only start with 1 hive and the queen has something happen to the queen, you have nothing to fall back on. Whereas if you start with 2 hives, and there's a bit of manipulation in this now, you can take eggs out of the other hives. Say if a queen fails or one, you can take the eggs, a frame of brood with young larvae from 1 hive and put it into the second hive, and they'll make a queen of their own. So that's why it's important to think with 2 hives to compare the hives to each other. Yeah, that's another thing. So if one hive is very strong and the other one is very weak, you can strengthen them up by giving them a couple of frames of brood into the weak one. So okay, started with just, yeah. So like, if I would say 2 hives, if you're getting into it at all, like if you just start with 1, the hive more than likely will die out, because there's a huge sort of a attrition rate with bees, especially in the winter time. The last winter was excellent. I have about 60 hives, and I think there's only about 2 of them dead. But the winter before, I lost about 40% of my hives. So that can happen, and that will happen. Like they can die out. There's a huge sort of attrition rate with them. Yeah. You move on there, Douglas. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So just to give you a rough idea of the cost, and like it costs maybe around about €1,000 for 2 hives and all the equipment, the suits, the smoker, all the little bits and pieces that goes with it. Now, if you get into it and you say, this is not for me, which happens for a lot of people, you can always sell on the equipment. You'll take a little bit of a hit on it, but a lot of beekeepers will give you, you'll get €500 or €600 for it, and it's worth trying anyway. Like beekeeping is like a lot of things. It's like riding a bike or learning to play the piano. You can't really learn it out of a book. You need to get the 2 hives, and also as well as that, like it's a good idea to have a mentor, a sort of an experienced beekeeper. When I started out, I joined Offaly Beekeepers, and probably the best beekeeper in Ireland and England is a man called John Somerville, and he's like the Dalai Lama, the beekeepers. Everyone in Ireland goes to him if they have a problem, including myself. So it's important that you have somebody that maybe knows a little bit about bees, whether it's a neighbour or somebody you can pick up the phone and say, my queen is doing this, or my queen is dead, or what did I do wrong here, or there's no brood in this, or whatever, just that you can talk to people. And that's the sort of cover there. Yeah, join a beekeeping society and talk to other beekeepers. Yeah. Okay, do you want to move on? Yeah, so like when you get into this, there's a lot of things you can do. Like the best thing, there's a couple of books there that I have. One is Guide to Bees and Honey, and it's Ted Hooper. It's a sort of the Bible, what to use in the Irish and British Isles. The second one is our own federation's Bees, Hive and Honey. 2 excellent books. You'll pick bits out of it. What I will say to you is that there's a lot of things on social media, and there's a lot of excellent stuff on social media which you'll pick up, but just don't be looking at stuff from America or Australia, because first of all, they sort of have different types of bees. Their climate is different. Stick to what the beekeepers is telling you here in Ireland and England as well. There's a couple of really good beekeepers in England. So like if you do that, you sort of won't go too far wrong. And that's more or less, let's say, all I'll say. And you can ask questions on it. Probably the best thing if people want to ask a few questions, you get more of it anyway. So I think we're near a finish there now.
Yeah, that's the last slide, Michael. Yeah, that's it.
That's the last slide. So look, if people want to ask me a few questions about the workings of the hive, or even plants that you should sow, or whatever you think yourself, I'm willing to answer them here as best I can. The fellow says I'm not an expert, but I'll impart as best I can what I know. Yeah. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And could I just add, Michael, I think you were saying as part of the program you were happy to act as a mentor for budding beekeepers.
I will, yeah, no problem. Anybody wants to ring me there, there's no problem at all. I know Richard Markham there and a few that's on the group. By all means, this time of the year now, I would have a good few people ringing me, but I'll try and answer questions as best I can. There's a certain leap of faith with this as well, though. You have to get out yourself and sort of do it yourself, but I'll give as good a guidance as I can. Yeah. Hello.
Yeah. Any questions? Anyone? It's so well explained. There's no questions, Mike.
Yeah.
Wait, sorry, John. I just want to say thanks very much, Michael. That was a very good presentation, and I wasn't aware of all the health benefits from that. The different types of honey, which is great. So what you were saying, we can take on the Kiwis at their own game, nearly.
Absolutely, and I'd encourage people to buy Irish honey if you can, preferably from your local beekeeper, because it's like if you have somebody in the family, let's say you take asthma, right? The antidote to the pollen that you're breathing in, the pollen you're breathing in is causing the asthma you have. So the antidote to that is the local honey within maybe 20-25 mile radius. And Irish honey is very good. Like, some of the honeys, I'm not going to mention any names, but if you buy a jar of honey, a lot of honey that's sold is not honey at all. It's like corn syrup. A lot of it comes from very spurious countries, without mentioning names. If you see a mixture of EU and non-EU blended honey, I'd be steering clear away from that, because even the ethical questions that has to be asked, let's say honey coming from certain countries, you know, first of all, how they keep their bees. Secondly, how they treat the farmers who keep the bees. There'll be a lot of questions to be asked in that. Like we do farm them in a very, very careful way. Modern beekeeping, from a technological point of view, has come on a lot in the last 15, 20 years. Like the hives that I use now are polystyrene hives, and there's nearly like living in an A or B rated house. The bees are extremely comfortable and warm in the winter time. Even to, let's say, if you want to feed them, which you have to do this time of the year, you have to feed them a certain amount of sugar with, I give them a seaweed mixture as well. It's all natural, just to build up colonies, but they're kept in a very sort of ethical, which is important. Like bees are a creature as well, so it's important that they're kept right and proper as well. Yeah, but I'd encourage people to buy Irish honey, or if they can at all. Yeah.
I think if I can add to that, Michael, I think is it honey and olive oil are the two most adulterated substances in the world in terms of
absolutely, yeah. Honey most definitely, and I know there's a huge, well, with the olive oil there's a huge mafia influence in it. I think it's something similar with honey, but and like even down to the taste, like, you know, I'm not going to mention names, but if you go into the shop and you buy a jar of honey for €2, right, it's probably corn syrup, and it tastes like corn syrup. Whereas, you know, I have a lady now comes to me and she buys my honey. She comes to the house here and she buys my honey, and like she there, when I run out, let's say if I run out of honey, she uses the different brands of honey, the shop Littlest or whatever, and she said the kids won't eat it. The only honey they'll eat is my honey. Now, not just my honey, but all beakers, because there's that certain flavour and aroma from the Irish honey that you don't get from the cheap honey. Yeah, so it's a superior, far superior product. Irish honey. Yeah.
Well, I'm so sorry. Excuse me, Michael. It's just a question I have because I do a bit of work with when I have an interest in nutrition, and I tend to stay away from honey just purely because I think it's full of sugar.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether whether I could be totally wrong on that.
Well, I would have people. Yeah, there's a lot of sugar in it, all right. Like, but there's a huge amount of sort of enzymes and antiseptic properties in it as well. And I suppose, you know, they're still doing research on what actually is in honey. All I know is that it's a very nice product to taste, and it's if not eaten into excess, it's a healthy product to eat. You know, they're doing research on it that it's very good for even your gut function. You know, a lot of people now are into the kombuchas and the kefirs and the different, but honey now as well is an excellent product for your gut function. And let's say people who maybe run down or whatever, it's like going back to the propolis. It has a very good antiseptic property inside. So if you have any, let's say your stomach, it's very good for any cuts or any internal cuts that you may have. Honey product is excellent for it as well. Yeah.
Isn't there a question of the pasteurization as well, Michael? So a lot of the honey in shops, it has to be heated, so that would actually destroy a lot of the vitamins.
Absolutely.
Minerals that would be in the honey, whereas you buy the raw, unpasteurized honey, there's a big difference there as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I forgot to mention that, like all honeys, let's say you buy, the vast majority of it anyway is pasteurized, whereas if you buy honey from your local beekeeper, it comes straight from the hive. It's only cold pressed or spun and put in a jar. So you're getting all the good benefits of the local honey, as opposed to a product that's any of the good of it is heated out of it, and it's basically all that's just left is sugar. So like the honey that you buy, that you buy from a local beekeeper, you know where it's coming from, and people come to my house, and nearly everybody knows somebody local that keeps a few bees. And for the sake of the extra €3 or €4 for the jar of honey, it's money well spent, and it's good. Look, it keeps the local beekeeper going. He's doing a little bit for the environment as well by his pollination, and you're rest assured that you're getting a top class product. Like there's also other things as well, like just as I mentioned, there's different creams you can make, and it's a huge industry in itself making creams from beeswax. Propolis as well, it's the best known antiseptic in the world, and I know beekeepers make a little tincture of it for, let's say, sore throats. Down to the beeswax, people making candles and one thing another is huge industry. Even, let's say, the bee sting, like they say that beekeepers never get arthritis. I'm not too sure about that. I'm at it 10 years. I haven't got it yet, but like if you have very bad arthritis, the injection they give you is actually bee venom. So there's a huge world out there. The bees offer so much to humanity. It's just endless. What the different things can be done with it. Yeah.
If I could just add as well, from an environmental point of view, particularly if the native solitary bees and so on are depleted, as Michael was saying, with the pollinator function in terms of seeds and fruit for the wildlife, I think is a difference. If you have your bees in the rapeseed, there's 25-30% more crop. So it'll be similar in the hedgerows. If you're short of natural pollinators, some parts of the country would be, then the bees would do a good job of boosting the fruit yield for the birds and so on.
Absolutely. Like in certain parts of the world now, they actually pay beekeepers to bring their hives to the likes of the oilseed rape, and in America, the almond plantations in California. It's a huge business. I suppose there's pros and cons to that. You have a huge disease in America. They had a thing called colony collapse, and put it down a lot to bringing the bees to the plantations because it puts too much pressure on the bees. So it's a sort of a happy medium. There's a good lot of oilseed rape crops being grown in Ireland. I really don't bring bees to oilseed rape. A lot of beekeepers does because it builds up their colony in the springtime. I find that the honey it crystallizes the honey, and the bees get very cross from it. So I prefer to build them up myself in the apiary. I give them a sort of a seaweed mix compound, and I feed them sugar. It's okay to feed them sugar in the springtime because they need to build up wax and build up the brood. But once you put on your supers, which the honey goes into, you can't feed them sugar. So they get in naturally from the trees and from the hedgerows. And you take the bramble is probably the most surest plant for bees. So I'd encourage people not to be cutting the briars if they can at all. If you have a few briars around the farm, leave them. A clump of briars there, if you look in the summertime, it's full of bees. And I'd encourage people to grow a little bit of wildflower if they could. It looks well, and it brings in a few bees.
Just we had a question there. Could I just also add a bit there as well, Michael? We're talking about colony collapse disorder. So they're also, bees and birds actually are very important. They are the canaries in the coal mine in terms of contamination of the wider environment. So one of the big factors in America is there's such an extensive use of biocides.
Yes,
They found that certain colony, where they're badly affected, and as you're saying, they're bringing them to the crops, which are all sprayed with this, that, and the other, and they found up to 80 different types of pesticides and herbicides and fungicides in the bees. And in particular, I think what's implicated is there's a class of pesticides called neonicotinoids. And
That's
what
the one,
that does is it destroys the bees, or it destroys the way it kills the insect, it destroys their capacity to orientate themselves. And of course, for bees, that's critical, because one of the things with the CCD is you come back to the hive. Now, look, I think fortunately we're not too badly affected in Ireland on account of using maybe less of these substances. But you come back to the hives at the end of the winter, and there just wouldn't be any bees there. There'd be the queen and a few bees left. And what has happened is they've been affected, they fly out, and then of course they can't find their way back. So they just die in the wider environment. So that's where the term comes from. The colony has literally just disappeared.
Yeah, that's true. It happens a good bit. Let's say sunflowers and certain crops of maize. They put it on the seeds in Europe, but I think it's banned now. Those nicotinoids in Europe anyway, which is good. Just another thing, you'd be amazed. Let's say mobile phone masts. Like bees have these thing called when they're mating, when the queen is mating with the drones, to have a thing called this congregation areas. Now, they're very, very hard to find where they are. Let's say they're not, it's very hard to find a congregation area, but you just fly out on the wing and you see the mate with the drones in a specific spot in the air. But if you put in, let's say, mobile phone masts, it can affect these congregation areas, which is a thing can have a big effect on the mating of queens. So the least little thing can really affect bees, and it's important that, like, even going back to the breeding, it's important. Okay, you have one queen, but you in a queen could lay maybe 2,000 drones in a hive. So it's important that the drones are of sort of the native Irish bees. So that's why, let's say if a foreign queen lays 2,000 drones, that's 2,000 drones from an Italian or Carolinian queen, and that can have a huge detrimental effect on the population of the bees in a 3 or 4 mile radius around that. So that's why we're trying to get them banned. And I'm lucky enough. I don't have any really foreign bees near me, but I know certain areas where there would be, let's say, beekeepers that's bringing in these foreign queens, and it can have a huge detrimental effect on the sort of the docility of your apiary.
And it also brings in the risk of disease as well. I think
absolutely.
I think that's how we had the Varroa mite came in through imported colonies. Because normally Ireland would not have these diseases, but if you bring an infected, like with the ash dieback, basically some clever beekeeper brought the disease straight into the country, and then that's had a big impact on. Yeah,
Varroa is a curious one. Varroa is the big talking point for the last 20 years. It came into Ireland about 25 years ago, they reckon down in Mayo, and of course it's spread all over the country now. But what we're seeing with Varroa, Douglas, is that the bees are building resistance to it. Like, I don't treat for Varroa anymore. A lot of the bigger beekeepers don't treat for Varroa anymore. Some of them do. But what's happening is we try to breed from the colonies that are virtually Varroa resistant. So if you have a queen that's breeding a colony that has a low Varroa count, we try and breed from those queens if we can. And like as I said at the start of the talk, bees are around for 90 million years. They'll probably be around when we're all gone, when humanity is gone, and that could be the way we're going. That could be sooner rather than later. But they have a way of overcoming whatever adversity is put in front of them, and they have done for 90 million years. So a lot of people are saying, Varroa is going to wipe out bees worldwide, but it won't, because we can see them as present, especially in the Irish bee. And the Irish bee is very resilient, very suited to our damp climate, and they are building up Varroa resistance big time. Yeah.
And I suppose is the dark color is an adaptation, isn't it, Mike? Because we've got the cloudy weather, so the dark would absorb heat better than a
absolutely, yeah. The Irish bee is what we call the black bee. They're virtually black, whereas the Carolinians or the the Buckfast bees, they're like the Kilkenny hurling team. They're yellow bands, like you can see. I hope there's no one from Kilkenny on this, but that's what they're like. They're like yellow. They have yellow lines along the backs of them. And if I see a hive that has those, the queen gets she gets Marie Antoinette, so she does.
We have a question coming in from Adrian there. I think he's been out all day making frames. The wild man down there. So he's got loads of questions for you. So
thanks,
a long session. Go ahead.
Just back to the Varroa there. You're talking about how do you know what to look for, or how do you test for Varroa? You were saying you have a low count.
Well, Varroa, you can actually see the Varroa. If you have good eyesight, you can see the Varroa sort of stuck to the backs of the bees. In my hives now, I have a tray in the bottom. It's a white tray, and the bees will shake the Varroa, or they'll down onto the tray. Now you can do a thing with ice and sugar. That just you put the ice and sugar on the back of the bees, and the bees will sort of groom themselves in, and the Varroa falls off. Like so, you just do a count in of the amount of Varroa that you have in the tray, and say this time of the year now, the Varroa count would be low, but as the bees build up, the Varroa builds up in the drone cells. So let's say if you open up a few drone cells in your colony, and say if you open up maybe 10 drone cells and you have one Varroa mite, we'll say that's 10%. Well, if you have anything, let's say over 20-30%, then you have a bad infestation of Varroa, you know.
Okay. How do you treat for that then? Or what do you do in that case?
Yeah, you can't really treat. You can't treat when you have supers on. You can treat with a thing called BioAxel. I think that's BioAxel. It's a chemical treatment. I can get you the proper name of it now, but or you can treat with oxalic acid. Now, I always found oxalic acid is very, very hard on bees. I said I don't treat anymore because I think my bees are becoming resistant. And also, I give them a thing called Hive Alive, which contains a thing called thymol. It's a natural. It comes made from thyme, and Varroa mite doesn't like thymol. So if you feed your bees in the springtime with sugar and the product called Hive Alive, I find that reduces the amount of Varroa that you have. But in the wintertime is the ideal time to treat them for Varroa, and it's a thing called, used to be a thing called ApiGuard. There's a couple of different products. If you go to any of the suppliers, they'll give you the name of it. I think I just can't think of the name of the product there now, but if I think of it, I'll give it to one of the lads there and they can pass it on to you. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And just another thing, I am trying to become a member of the Offaly Beekeeping Association, but it looks for an FIBK number for me to fill in the membership. Then I went to try email Geraldine and but the email is not working for some reason. It's not being.
That's your IBAN. You're like Bertie Ahern. You don't have a bank account, right? Are you?
Just registered in my bank.
But they're just looking for your IBAN there. Watch for Adrian.
Is it IBAN?
Yeah, your IBAN, yeah. Your big code your IBAN. Offaly is very, very good. When I'm in Offaly for about 10 years, and look at the beekeepers in Offaly. Probably the best beekeepers in the country is in Offaly. Very good beekeepers, and they have a good society there. So.
Okay, great.
Yeah, you learn a bit there, Adrian. Yeah.
Nice. And just another one on the vent. I recently just purchased a cedar hive, a national, but there's no vent in the bottom. And I just seen a lot of other people talking about vent in the bottom to allow air in or to regulate temperature.
Yeah. Is it a solid floor, Adrian?
Solid floor, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. A lot of people were using what's called grid varroa floors. There's a grid in the bottom of them, so that the varroa might fall down.
Okay.
Most beekeepers are going away from those because they're too cold in the winter time.
Okay.
And like if you have a cedar hide is the top of the range hive, like, so that'd be a good hive, all right, like, so the solid floor is good. What I'd say to you is, do you have bees yet, or you're just getting?
No, I'm just waiting on I was supposed to get them this week, but with the weather, we're going to hold off until the weather picks up a bit. I think next week. I just met the frames up today.
Okay, so you've ordered a nook, like, is it?
Yeah. There's a fella there in Clonmacnoise. He's going to give me a swarm.
Swarm. Yeah, lovely. So so that's a good hive. Should be very, very warm in the winter time. Just get them through the summer. You won't have any honey, I'd say, this year for only a nook. And just look after them. Get a little feed them if they're getting a little bit light. And then what I would do when you were starting off, I would treat them all right now, let's say, for the first year, and get rid of all the varroa you can out of them if they have. And now maybe the guy you're buying off, maybe if they don't have varroa, there's no point in treating them.
I think he might have treated them over the winter. He does treat them over the winter, I think.
Yeah. Well, then you're fine. You need to treat them. Yeah, I would say, because if they're varroa, if they're treated for varroa, they wouldn't have varroa, like, and they should be okay with you. Like, yeah.
On the back of what just Adrian was bringing up there, do you supply bees, Michael?
I don't really.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I sort of, whatever swarms I get, I run 60 hives there, and
wow.
I do splits all right, and I breed queens. I'm only breeding queens now for the last year. We're a member of the NIBS. It's called the Native Irish Bee Society of Ireland, and we're breeding black queens at the moment. But I wouldn't be sort of proficient enough to start selling them yet. But once my breed is up to the standards, then maybe I will sell a few nooks, all right. But what a lot
would
of
you have
people
people to recommend, Michael? Sorry. Would you have people you'd recommend as suppliers of bees?
I would, yeah. I would. Yeah. Some people are, I would. I can give names. Yeah. Gives names to people there. Alternatively, what you can do as well is, you can put out what's called swarm traps. Maybe catch a swarm from your own area. There's pros and cons to it. They're free bees. They won't cost you anything, and they're sort of indigenous to your own area, so they're from your own immediate genetic gene pool. Yeah. They can be swarmy though. They can swarm on you, let's say after the first year, but at least you're getting into bees and they don't really cost you anything. But like, by all means, the bees you buy from a good beekeeper or from a registered beekeeper, they're the Irish bees, and they probably are top of the range, like,
And may I ask you, you would know offhand an approximate price just for someone who's getting into it? Would you have an idea?
Yeah, I would. Yeah. They're retailing roughly, it depends on the year and how many bees out, but roughly around €300 for a nook, maybe 250 to 300 euros.
Okay.
I'll just give you the full.
You could explain the nook, Michael, for the uninitiated.
Yeah, a nook is like a small hive of bees. It's about 5 frames in a little box, maybe about 4 frames of brood with a breeding queen, young queen, and that nook will expand out. You bring it home and you put it into your hive, and it'll expand out. Then you won't have honey the first year, but you'll have honey after that. Then, yeah. And a queen then lives for about 4 years. A good queen will live 4 years. Usually after 3 years, you'd want to be replacing your queen. There's sort of a whole new lecture on that, like of how to do what they call artificial swarms and how to introduce a new queen, because you can't just put a new queen into a hive. They'll kill the queen. So there's methods of how to do that. But after 3 years, you'd want to be changing your queen. And there's a whole other lecture then on sort of swarm cells and going through your boxes. If you have swarm cells in a box which looks like a little peanut, it's a new queen that they're hatching, and you have to take action then, or your hive will swarm. So there's a little bit of work in all of that, it's an interesting.
They filled up quickly, Michael. Sorry. I was saying if your nook filled up the hive quickly and you had and you had your swarm cells, would that be an opportunity to do your own split? Would that be something you'll do on the first year if they were building up well enough? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I wouldn't split a nook now. The nook is too small. It's very, very rare that a nook with a new queen in it will produce swarm cells, unless the queen is sort of not good or hasn't been fertilized right, or the queen got killed or something in the box. But what you can certainly do is, if you have a good, strong, big hive, let's say 8 or 10 frames of brood, what most beekeepers do is they just split it in two, and they move the old queen with about 3 frames of brood and food and pollen. So you make up a new hive with that, and in the old box that you took the queen out of, they'll make their own queen. They'll make a new queen. So then you can divide one box into two. It's what's called an artificial swarm. And a lot of keepers do that.
I was referring if the nook built up into a hive. I wasn't saying to split the nook. That you,
God, you can.
If it built up, say come June or July, you had a big, maybe June. If you had good forage in terms of a good supply of food nearby, the bees will build up very quickly. And as you said, particularly on the rape, if you bring them to the rape seeds, you can double your hives in a matter of weeks, nearly.
Absolutely. Oh yes, Douglas, you can split them then. All right, just take out the old queen and move her. Move the old queen with maybe about 2 to 3 frames of brood, a frame of pollen, and maybe a frame of food. Pollen is most important. Make sure you bring a frame of pollen as well. You can certainly split that, and the two of them will go on fine. Yeah. Some beekeepers the old box will produce maybe 8 to 12, maybe more queen cells. What a lot of beekeepers do is they'll break them down all only 2. Some people break it down to 1. But I don't really do that. And what happens is, like, the first queen that's hatched out, she'll go around the box and she'll kill all the other queens in the little peanuts, in the little queen cells. She'll sting them into the side of them. So then she's the dominant queen then. And after about 3 or 4 days, then she flies out and she mates on the wing. And she comes back to the box then. She might fly maybe 2 or 3 times, depending on the weather, until she's mated with about 15 or 20 drones. She'll come back to the box then, and she won't fly out anymore. She'll stay in the box for 3 years until the queen, and it's actually the bees decide to get rid of the queen. It's not the other way around. Once the pheromone changes in the hive, they'll know that she's failing, that she's getting old, she's failing. The smell in the hive will change, her scent will change. So they will kill her and they'll throw her out of the box and they'll make a new queen.
Wow, excellent.
So it's nature, it's the cruelty of nature, yeah.
It's a democracy, Michael, yeah?
It's democracy, exactly. It's democracy. And there's no such thing as strikes or unions or anything in beehives, in boxes. They all do whatever they're supposed to do, yeah.
If someone was getting into it, what would your annual input costs be, and what could they expect if they wanted to do it for personal, like just honey, or for production wise? I'm not saying they went up to 60 hives like yourself, but what have you an idea around cost or figures, or even the amount of honey that a hive might produce? Yeah,
like I was saying there, if you get 2 hives and all the equipment that goes with it, you should get it for about €1,000.
Yeah.
Now, it's like what Adrian there got a cedar hive, and they're good. They're very extremely expensive, a cedar hive. Yes. Like usually what I buy is polystyrene hives. They're sort of for commercial beekeepers, or if you want to make a few bob out of them, because in a commercial box they'll build the box right out to the walls, whereas a wooden box is that bit colder, and of a very bad winter you can lose them.
Yeah.
Just on the honey side of things, good queen, like I've had boxes of honey, let's say last year there, and I would have got maybe 70-80 pounds of honey off them, like, you know.
Okay. And just the running input costs, like, you know what I mean, if you're saying if you're looking after the welfare of the bees, what would you be expected to put in cost?
Yeah, well, apart from your own time, there's not a lot. You have to buy a little bit of sugar in the springtime, all right. Maybe around about 3 or 4 pounds of honey, feed them just to build up, to make them. You see, if you feed them honey, it gets their wax glands going, especially a small colony, and it'll make them wax for the queen to fill up the little wax cells.
Great.
And you buy a little thing called Hive Alive as well. It's full of very good vitamins, and that really gives them a boost as well. Apart from that, then there's not a huge. You might have to replace every 2 or 3 years the wax sheets out of the frames. They cost maybe around about 160. They're getting expensive now. Maybe we're 160 each. So in a box, around 16 euros, and in the supers maybe around 12 euros. So every 2 or 3 years you might maybe spend 30 or 40 euros in a box, like, you know.
All right, so quite low overall then. Once it's just your initial setup costs, and then you're away.
Setup costs, and then there's not a huge amount of expense after that. It's apart from your own time as well, but
that's
it's
a pastime as well, though, as you say.
The pastime, yeah.
Very good.
But a nice hive of honey there, a nice couple of supers of honey, like, you know, honey is retailing now. 8-ounce jar of honey there you sell for around €5. So make that up yourself. Like, it's a pound of honey then is 5 tenors, 8 ounce, 8 and 8, 16, yeah. So you're talking maybe around 10, 12 euros a pound.
Yeah.
And if you have a hive they're producing 50, 60 pounds of honey, like, you know.
A good return then, I mean, in your investment, if you're doing it for that reason.
There's a good return on it. Like, if you have good bees and good productive queens, there's a nice little income in it, and I know people, and they're living out of it, like, you know.
Very good.
There's lots of work with it, all right, but and then you have people that will be selling the few colonies, and, you know, I know people breeding queens. A good Irish queen there, black Irish queen, is just, you pay 60 euros for one. A mated queen, and for a virgin queen you'll be paying around 20, 25 euros for a virgin queen if you buy them there off of somebody like LT Beekeepers or some of those professional beekeepers, like, you know. So there is people making a nice living at it, you know.
That's lovely, and as you said, all that, the health benefits directly to yourself or your family member if there was an asthmatic or something like that. Plus, as you said, the environment and the pollinator side of things for the farming, which is excellent.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's a plus.
A lot of pluses, and I keep going back to, you know, like, I suppose you get into this world of beekeeping, like, and you're growing a few acres of wildflower, it sort of opens the door to a lot of other pollinators as well, which is important. And, you know, it's nice. The wildflower is nice if it's done, if it's well done, you know. And even I see a lot of the sort of community. Village groups and things like that, and they come to me that might get a little bit of wildflower off me, or they say to me, well, what did you blow there? It looks well. And you know, so it sort of gives people an interest. Or I might meet them at an old honey show or something like that, and they'd say, what do you put in the garden? Your garden looks good, or whatever, you know. So
I've seen a lot of it last year, all right, and it absolutely looks wonderful. And I saw your own photograph, which is fantastic.
Yeah, no, it looks well. Now, some years it doesn't look great, but that last year. And then, like, you look at the bottom line with it, Francis, like, we go to the old meetings there, and sure, you know, you meet people, and it's a huge social outlet as well. Like, I know beekeepers around the country now. It's nearly like being in the Freemasons. Like, you know, you have your own, nearly your own handshake, and you meet lads and people and ladies and whatever, and you talk to what they're at, and you get bits of tricks of what they're doing. And I said, it's an old thing you can't learn out of a book. You sort of learn it from lads, tried this last year and this worked well, and something else. And it's interesting from that point of view, you know.
A couple of questions there. James first, I think, and then hopefully Richard has managed to unmute himself.
Yeah, no better.
Good evening. I just wanted to say, remember Offaly Beekeepers there as well.
Yeah.
And I have, obviously, in this program, but one thing that I would say is John Somerville is my mentor, and I have 4 hives, and I suppose the one thing I would, a good mentor is worth 100 books, and I learned nothing. I learned nothing from the books. I only learned from the mentor, and I wouldn't even class myself a beekeeper. I class myself as an apprentice, and the only the only thing I ever learned about the hive, I learned from John or from mentor. I don't think it's something that can go out and just learn. I think there's so many mistakes that that an example, opening the hive now when the weather's too cold is a very simple one, but it happens.
Yeah.
Breaking up, James.
Yeah, just James, you hit the nail on the head there, most definitely. And I know John Somerville is my mentor as well. And the fellow says, I wouldn't be in bees at all only for John Somerville. Like a lot of people.
More often than not, and I suppose the one.
Breaking up a bit, James.
Yeah, maybe if he close. Yeah.
Yeah. No, James is dead right. Like as I said, John Somerville is a sort of nearly like the Dalai Lama of beekeepers. Not only is he a mentor to James and me, but I'd say every beekeeper in Ireland knows John Somerville. Like the man, he wins awards in Ireland and England at all the shows, and he's definitely the man to go to if you have a problem. And you learn more from him than you will out of any book. And like it is important to have a mentor. But there is other beekeepers in Offaly, especially there. Other beekeepers are as good maybe as John and can give you advice. But it is important to have a good mentor. Very, very important, James.
Richard, are you able to talk now? Are you? No, we can't hear anything. It could be the volume as well. It came in, Richard, yeah?
It's unfortunate. No, I know Richard is good beekeeper as well as John.
Hey, buddy.
Oh. It's going to go out and come back in again, maybe. Do you want to explain to Adrian, Michael, about the light when the heft in the hive, when it's light, you were saying give them a feed?
Oh, yeah. It's a sort of a trick that you'd know. Like if you lift the side of your hive, you'll know it by sort of instinct or whatever, if it's heavy or light. Like bees in themselves, they don't weigh anything. They're very light. So you'll know if you need to put, it's a sort of an instinct. You learn by the thing. If you go with another beekeeper and you have to couple the size of the hive, and the beekeeper says, well, that hive is fine, or this hive needs feeding. You know by the lifting the side of it if it needs a little feed. Especially this time of the year. Like the funny thing about it is, if you get a very bad spring, like a few days like this or a week like this, your queen is building up, you see, and they need a huge amount of resources. They need a bit of food coming in all the time. Preferably what they need is pollen, but they do need, let's say, sugar feed as well. So you might need to feed them this time of the year. In actual fact, another time of the year is a thing called the June gap. You think, let's say, June is the middle of the summer and have lost, but there's a June gap there, sort of just after the clover, or no, it's just after, let's say, the likes of, let's say, dandelions, and before the blackberry comes in. And if the clover is not too good, they can starve at that time of this year because there's a huge amount of colony of bees there. There could be 40, 50,000 bees in the box, and they just have no food. And I often seen as well, maybe have a good spring and you might have 2 supers of honey on a box, and you say, this is great now. But if you get that June gap, you get a real bad June gap, they can eat all that honey on you. So it's important just to keep an eye on them, and you will get to know after a while by lifting the side of the box whether they do need a little feed, you know.
And there'd be a fierce weight and there'd be a fierce weight if the hive there was good amount of honey in it. It's good exercise now moving it around, you know.
Yeah. Move, right. Actually, boxes of honey, like honey is about twice the weight of water. It's very heavy. It's like lead. And so if you have a super of honey, you could have 25 kilos in a super. Like, and some people use brood boxes. You have a huge weight. You could have 35, 40 kilos of honey in a brood box. So it's another thing when you're at bees, you need to watch your back, and you know it is. We're there thinking, when Jesus, I have whatever 500 or 600 pounds worth of honey, euros worth of honey here, and next thing you hurt your back. I see Richard Markham there.
Yeah, I'm back on. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Go on, Richard. Yeah.
Oh,
a round of applause.
Hey. Yeah. No, I've got a couple of colonies in the garden, Michael. I spoke to you about it there last year. One of them came from a tree that I cut down, and there was a colony in the tree. I managed to get them home.
Yeah.
And there was a swarm come off that last May time, and they survived all last summer. Very, very happy with them. I left a super on them all winter for feed. Yeah. Okay. There was a bit of honey in the super, and rather than take the honey off, I said I'll leave the super on the colony for the winter, and it'll get them through the winter. Now they've got through the winter, and you'll probably tell me I'm wrong now, but one day there, about 10 days ago, it was 15 or 16 degrees. I actually went into the hive. Okay.
Yeah.
The super is still full of honey.
Yeah.
Okay. The brood box has 1, 2, 3, 4, had 6 frames of brood in it, and the outside frames were full of honey.
Good.
All right.
Yeah.
Do I put another? I'm worried that the queen and the brood haven't got enough room for more brood. Do I put another brood box on top of the original box, or do I leave it as it is?
Don't do anything for the minute. It's too early now to do anything yet. And even you were lucky now a week ago that you didn't do damage. It's too early. Like around the middle of April to the end of April, May is the right time to go in. You see, what I'd say to you is, can the queen get up into the super, or is there a queen exclusive?
Yes.
Yeah, she can get into the super. Yeah, that's okay. Just leave that on it for the moment. Don't do anything now for maybe about a fortnight.
Okay.
And then if you could take off the super and put on a second brood box on top of them then until when it gets warmer. Now what I do is you said there's honey either side of the brood. There is in the box.
There's honey either. Yeah, there's brood. There's brood in the middle. I say I wasn't in there for more than 5 minutes, but there's brood in the middle. And there's the 2 outside frames on the brood box are full of honey as well. Yeah.
So I put the super on, I put the brood box on maybe after 4 or 3 weeks when the weather gets nice and mild.
Okay.
And then put the super back up on the top of them then.
Okay.
Up on the top of the brood box. And then you should be okay. Yeah, that was good work now to get them through the winter, because I knew they were, what you're saying, they were weak enough.
Well, yeah, and that's why I left the super on there with honey, and I've been feeding them as well, Michael, with that. Is it Apivert that you get that I bought off you?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I found that very good. I've got a smaller colony then as well, and I'm adamant that they've got through the winter through feeding them that Apivert. Apivert
is excellent stuff. I used it all last winter there. Really, it comes from Germany. It's excellent stuff. But what I used last year is I used the Apivert, and I put a little thing called Hive Alive into it as well. Like, you think I was working for Hive Alive, but it is good stuff. Hive Alive. It's a natural product, and it's very good. It's full of whatever is in it. It just builds up colonies. They literally explode when you give them that Apivert and the Hive Alive. What I do as well is I give them a little bit of Apivert as well on the top of the super, right? Have you got a feeder? You have.
Yeah.
So then, and then once they start building into the second brood box, I put the queen excluder on between the second brood box and the super, and take off the Apivert. Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's fine. Very helpful. Thank you.
No, you're going well, Richard. Yeah, the best of luck with it. Yeah.
All right. No, I'll be round to see you. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll see you sometime, Richard. Okay.
Thank you.
So that's Anybody else? Any questions?
Sorry, I just see something like the fondant. Is that something?
Fondant,
yeah.
Feed fondant in. You feed fondant in the winter time. It's like icing sugar. You can buy it from some of the suppliers around. I don't know. It costs around €2 a bag. There again, I usually give it to them just after Christmas, a little Christmas present. All my hives, whether they're good or whether they're heavy or light, a little bit of fondant, and that's excellent to increase. So just ticks them over for the winter. It's a nice little feed for them, better than them going hungry. But like the way the winters are going now is, you see, I see last couple Christmas Day, I had bees flying the same as if it was in August. It's unbelievable. Like the mildness, there was days there in January and February, and like you're getting 12, 14 degrees, the bees are out flying, and literally you think there's nothing out, but they're bringing back in pollen. So our climate has because of the changes, it's not as difficult as one time as when you're getting 3 feet of snow to get them through the winter. These are get them through the winter now, but that said, I still give them a little bit of feed of fondant. It only costs about €2 a hive.
Okay, and just on the sugar, on the feeding them the sugar, is there any recommendation on a feeder or?
You get little small round feeders from the likes of Donegal Bees or from any of those bee suppliers. The holes maybe around about 2 litres. But what I'd say to you, just put in, don't give them too much. I give them about 1 litre at a time, of around 1-to-1 sugar to water. So 1 kilo of sugar to 1 litre of water.
Okay.
That's the mix. And that's a nice little mix. Shake it well, a little squirt of the Hive Alive, and that's a lovely feed for them. They're doing well in that.
Cool. Thanks, Michael.
Now, you could get into look at. There's other things you can do.
But should we do another session maybe later, Michael?
I don't mind. Like I can go into more detail if people want to have other few bits and tricks and pieces, even get them through the winter. And if people want to know how to breed queens, it's technically it's not that difficult when you get into it, but there's a little bit of work in it. But it could give you the bones of how to do that if you wanted to. Yeah.
Brilliant. I was thinking along the lines maybe. So obviously Adrian has started, and some of the others want to start with the bees. So maybe in a couple of months, once they've been playing around with them a bit, hopefully, then it makes a lot more sense, because I think it's a bit abstract at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe would that be something we could arrange?
No problem with that. Yeah, we can certainly do that. But I would say to people, join the society. It doesn't matter Tipperary, Galway, Offaly, and you learn a lot there. Like from joining the society, you meet other beekeepers. Like as I said at the start, I'm no expert and I don't have all the answers, and I make more mistakes and have in the past than any beekeeper. But that's the way you learn. Some didn't work out for you last year. You do something different, and that's the way you improve and learn.
Would there be a practical suggestion that if Adrian, someone wants to invite around to Adrian's and setting up, or you go around to your place, Mike? I'm not trying to open your door. I'm just suggesting that someone might say,
I have no problem. I have no issue with that. I can show you a couple of hives of what I do.
Yeah.
That's no bother. People are welcome.
Thank you, Michael.
Give me a couple of days notice. Like Richard was out with me there last year, and that's not a problem at all. I'll show you my apiaries there of what happens here, and we can go through it that way. Yeah.
It might just make it more learn quicker and see easier that all the things you're speaking of. So it'd be brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. And I think when I was starting, that was, as you said, I think I was in Kildare Beekeepers because of where I'm based, and that process of going to the hives with the experienced beekeepers and doing stuff with them, it really speeded up my learning process anyway. As you said, you got to get out and do it. So
yes,
if lads could get and do a session or two with you, Michael, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, we could arrange a day,
problem.
maybe a couple could go along at once. It'd be fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Just bear in mind, you have to have maybe a sort of a nice-ish day, fine day, and maybe after a month or two, you'd see it's probably the best time to look at them. You see them bringing in the honey, and you'll see the queen building up, and we might be able to show you a few queens and stuff
Lovely.
like that, and you get an idea of what the native Irish queens look like. And that, yeah.
Super.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Okay, well, I hope that was helpful to you, and you might pick up some little thing from it there. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Michael. Brilliant.
No, super. Thank you for the everything, your effort and the presentation tonight. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll have to go on a junket to where Las Vegas. I'd have good beekeeping in Las Vegas. Richard Markham, Richard, you bring the checkbook, will you?
Yeah. Sorry, what's that got to do with bees, Michael?
Well, no, well, that's your job to sort of.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll make the connection.
You make the connection, yeah, no doubt.
Okay.
Super.
Okay, lads.
Lovely. Thanks, everyone.
Michael, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for attending tonight and taking the time out of your evenings. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks.
Very informative.
Thanks.
Take care, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers to that. Bye-bye.
Stop the recording.